Alright, so earthworms, make sure that you have the parenthesis annelids. This is the type of worm that we're looking at. Earthworms are called annelids because put out beside their annelids are segmented. They are segmented worms. They have little rings around them, which makes them look like they are cut up into segments. But those segments are pretty much just muscles. So, segmented worms.
Like the back part of the leg. You really have 7 weeks of school and you have to take semester.
Alright, so type of skeleton they have, hydrostatic. If you have a hydrostatic skeleton, is it squishy or crunchy? Squishy. It's squishy, so remind yourself, hey, that is squishy because it's water filled. Type of symmetry, bilateral. You can cut it in half. So, squishy, water-filled, type of symmetry, bilateral. You can cut it in half. Have a mirror image on each side. It has a head and a tail, even though earthworms don't really have a distinct head and tail until you learn about the parts of an earthworm. So, everybody have this written down. Alright, so movement. The way that an earthworm kind of crawls along the ground is it has these things called setae, which all they are, they're little bitty bristles. They're kind of like teeny tiny microscopic hairs. And they are on the ventral side. Let's think about the word ventral. Does it mean back or belly?
Back. I mean belly.
You have to know what that means for lab, because you can't come up to me and ask me, what does that mean, Miss Minor? I don't know. You need to remember. What it's there, it helps attach to surfaces so it can move. Otherwise, it's just kind of not going to get anywhere. So how do they move? They contract 2 groups of muscles. There's longitudinal muscles, which run this way. And then there are circular muscles that go around the body. So if we look at this little picture, you see these little bitty bristles. They're teeny tiny. Those are there to grip the ground so the earthworm can move. Those are the setae, those bristles. And then you'll see kind of these circular muscles that go around. It makes the earthworm look like it has rings all around it. Those are circular muscles. You're not going to really see the longitudinal muscles because they're covered up by the circular muscles, but they run this way. Alright, so for earthworm reproduction, it is internal. Out beside internal, if you want to put inside the body. And then the type of reproduction, that's sexual reproduction. That just means that you require gametes. Remember, back in last semester, gametes are egg and sperm, so it requires those to create a new organism. Our type of sexes or genders are monoecious, just like the clam. Remember, monoecious means that organism has both female and male reproductive organs. Now, the other type of organism that we're going to go over, put you a check mark by monoecious saying, hey, this is the type of genders that earthworms have. Monoecious, they contain both female and male reproductive organs. Other organisms are going to be dioecious. Dioecious meaning they are either a male organism or a female organism. They either have male reproductive organs or female reproductive organs. So make sure you have all of these written down. If you need a moment to write these down, pause the video. So everyone always wants to know about that kind of big Band-Aid kind of looking part of the earthworm. They're always like, what does that mean, Miss Minor? What is that thing? Well, actually, it's called a clitellum or a clitellum. And what it means is this is where fertilization takes place. This is where you make new baby worms. And once you've made those new baby worms, they go and they live in a cocoon. So that's where they're going to develop until, remember, because they're kind of, they're teeny weeny. They need time to develop, and then they're going to hatch from the mother. So this is what the clitellum looks like. It kind of looks like that kind of thick Band-Aid looking place on the worm. So just know, hey, that's where all the new baby worms are made. And then they're going to go to a cocoon. They're going to develop. They're going to grow there. And then they're going to hatch. They're going to leave the mother and go live in the dirt. So digestion. This is how they obtain food and they get nutrients from their food. Now, if you're an earthworm, you are a detritus feeder, which means, underline, you eat dead or decaying matter in the soil. So pretty much your food is kind of like you eat dirt. So next we're going to trace the pathway that food goes through in an earthworm. And I've numbered them 1 through 7. We'll put 7s on the next slide. Do not panic. So the first stop on the digestion bandwagon is something called the prostomium. All that is it's the upper lip. What it does is, so what that prostomium is going to do, it's kind of like the lips. It digs and pushes their food into their mouth, which is the dirt. So that earthworm's kind of crawling along. And as it's moving, that prostomium's kind of shoveling in dirt to its mouth. And we all know what happens in the mouth. You kind of chew up your food a little bit. What earthworms do is they just kind of roll it around in their mouth. Kind of break up that dirt a little bit because they don't have teeth. And then they send it to the pharynx. All it does is you take it from the mouth. It's going to pump food all the way through their mouth because their mouth is a little big. And it's going to go down the esophagus. Esophagus is just a nice long tube that food keeps traveling until it gets to the stomach. Now, an earthworm doesn't have a stomach. It has something called a crop and a gizzard. So the next stop is the crop. This is a temporary food storage. It's going to hold the food until it can travel to the gizzard. Because earthworms don't have teeth, they have a gizzard. And it's a little tough on the outside. And what that gizzard does is it has sand inside of it. And it's going to actually grind up that dirt, grind up that food. Kind of like what we do with our teeth. So, looky there. Crop and gizzard takes place of the teeth and the stomach. So instead of them having a stomach, they have a crop and a gizzard. Crop's going to hold it like their stomach would, food storage, and then that gizzard is kind of going to be like its teeth and grind it up for them so they can break down that dirt. Then, here's 7 and 8, it's going to travel down the intestine, just like we have intestines, and then it's going to go to the end of the road, the anus. And it's going to produce waste, and that waste is actually called castings. Casting comes from the term to cast off. Or, if we were just going to put this in 9th grade language, we're just going to, get rid of. We're just going to get rid of. So pretty much, they eat dirt, they're going to evacuate dirt. So if we look at this picture right here, we have out here, this little bump is the prostomium. Behind here would be the mouth. You do not have to label this, just watch. Then you're going to go to the pharynx. The food's going to go down the esophagus. It's going to hit the crop, which is right here. It's going to be stored there. Then it's going to head down to the gizzard, where it's going to be ground up by the sand. Then it's going to go down the intestine all the way the length of the body. And then it's going to be excreted at the end of the line, the anus. There's another look at the clitellum. Remember that's that kind of big band looking thing. Remember that's where fertilization takes place. And then it's going to send the new baby worms to a cocoon where the they're going to develop, and then they're going to hatch. Internal transport, so remember this is blood. Remember, just to let you know, in case you forgot, blood, its function, if you want to put out beside here in a parenthesis, the function of blood, its job. So that's another word for job. It's going to transport the nutrients and gases, that's things like carbon dioxide and oxygen. Maybe some waste, hormones, so that you can function throughout the body. Now, just like us, earthworms have hemoglobin in their blood. Hemoglobin is a chemical that helps your blood be the color red. Now, why is it red? Well, it kind of goes with its function. It has to be red so it can transport oxygen. So it can go to your lungs, all of your organs, because all your organs need oxygen so that you can live. So make sure you have these down. Then we're going to kind of look at this picture a little bit more in just a second. So pause the video if you need to make sure you got this down. So the type of circulatory system, how does their blood move through their body? They actually have, unlike our clam, they have a closed circulatory system, which means that they have vessels. Vessels are arteries and veins, just like us. So earthworms are kind of like us in the fact that they have a closed circulatory system, meaning they have arteries and veins. It's not, just oozing out everywhere like in the clam. No, so if you have a closed circulatory system, that means that you have some certain characteristics about you. Like, you have a fast rate of blood flow, because you got to get it to all those organs like the crop and the gizzard and the intestines. That also tells us if you need a closed circulatory system, you move kind of fast. Now, we move faster than an earthworm, but that earthworm sure does move a whole lot faster than that clam. That clam's just going to find somewhere and attach and live there its whole life. Earthworms are going to move and find new places in the dirt to make food and be able to live. Or pardon me, eat food. So, why do you need this? If you're a fast animal, you need fast moving blood. If you're going to be moving around, you got to get blood to all your organs and your muscles so that you can move. Now, their type of heart is very simple. They're comma shaped. So go ahead, draw your comma out beside there. And they usually have, the number of them is usually about, depending on how big the earthworm is, usually 5 to 9 little bitty commas all throughout their body. And remember, again, they have a closed circulatory system and they have red blood, just like us. Respiratory, how do they breathe? So remember, if we're talking about respiration, we're just talking about the exchange of gases. We're exchanging CO2 for O2. We need oxygen to be able to live. Why do we go through respiration? So we can get some energy. If you've ever had to run a long way, or you've been working really hard and you're going, you're trying to get lots of air to your lungs so that you can get oxygen to all your organs and your muscles so that you can have some energy. That's why you get winded. You've ran out of energy. You need to breathe. So how does an earthworm breathe? It's just like us. It intakes O2, which means we breathe this in. So go ahead and put breathe in. And then we expel O2. Or pardon me, CO2. My bad. Expel. For us, it would be breathing out. We would be going. But if you're an earthworm, that doesn't happen. You are going to breathe through your skin. You don't have lungs. You're going to intake oxygen, O2, through your skin, and then you're going to get rid of, expel CO2 through your skin because your skin's really, really thin. So, here's one of the big questions I always get. Miss Minor, because last night it rained. It rained a whole bunch in some places. If you start looking at driveways, you're going to see dead earthworms all over your driveway. And this is why. Because whenever the rain starts beating on the ground has oxygen in it, in the dirt. And as that rain falls, it's going to hit the dirt, and it's going to make the oxygen leave the dirt. Well, that earthworm's going to start saying, oh, I can't breathe. There's no oxygen here. Oh, my goodness. What's happening? So the earthworm decides, I'm going to go up to the surface, and I am going to find where all this oxygen is going. And as they are leaving the dirt, all this oxygen starts to leave through their skin because they're not in the dirt anymore. And then usually the earthworm gets lost and their skin dries out. And if their skin dries out, then that poor little worm can't breathe anymore. Pretty much it suffocates to death. It can't breathe anymore. It's going, I can't breathe. There's no oxygen. And then it dies. Poor little worm. So if you ever see a poor little worm on a driveway and it's dead, just know that poor little earthworm, it just kind of, it suffocated to death. Poor little worm. So earthworm anatomy, you have this picture on your paper. Now, you have two options. You can either write out the name of the part out beside the letter, like this, or you can make a list like I've made on my next slide. So you choose. I'm going to give you all the answers to this picture. So you can either, again, write the name out beside the letter if you want to, or you can just make a list like A is so-and-so, B is so-and-so. So here's my list. If you're looking at that picture, letter A represents the mouth of the earthworm. That's where it's going to take dirt. It's going to be shoveled into the mouth by the prostomium. Setae, remember those are the little bristles that help the earthworm grab the dirt and be able to move forward. Pharynx. That's the next stop where food goes after it travels through the mouth. Letter D stands for those comma-shaped hearts. On this earthworm, there's about 5 or 6. If we're talking about letter E, it represents the crop. Remember, that is that temporary storage unit for food. Then letter F is the gizzard. Remember, that takes the place of teeth for earthworms because earthworms don't have teeth. It is right behind the crop. Remember, the crop kind of represents the stomach. The gizzard represents the teeth, and it grinds up that dirt. After food goes through the gizzard and is grounded up by the sand, or ground up, pardon me, it's going to go to the intestine. And that food's going to travel down that long, tubey intestine. If we're talking about fertilization, letter H, that clitellum, it has the capability of joining that egg and sperm together, fertilization, to make new baby worms. And then letter I, end of the road for food, guys, the anus. So that is earthworms. Remember, your quiz on clams and earthworms is going to be Monday. We're going to review tomorrow. Your dissection is either going to be, if you're an even class, you're going to be next Tuesday, 4:13. If you are an odd class, you're going to be next Wednesday on 4:14. So, I will see y'all tomorrow.